So it's been a little over 2 weeks since PlayStation made the announcement that they are going to be ending all physical disc production for their upcoming games starting in January of 2028. And I had already made a video giving like my initial thoughts on this when it came out, as I was extremely disappointed. As somebody who is an avid physical video game fan, I pretty much get every new release for any game that I'm interested in a physical version. So hearing this information, it was just very sad for me. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about with like all the things that this is going to affect, because it's not just for PlayStation, but really just the entire video game industry as a whole. And I don't want to repeat all of those same points again. So if you haven't seen that video, there should be a little eye up in the corner right now. You can definitely click or tap on that if you want to go and watch that video, but I'll also have it in the outro of this video if you want to go and watch it after you're done watching this one. But it was really after I made that video, and then I read some of your guys' comments on it, I read some more articles with new information that came out after, and heard some more opinions, when I started to realize that this entire PlayStation disc situation is just way worse than I thought, and it's honestly just straight up evil what they're trying to do here. And that's why I need to make a follow-up video to talk more about it, because there's new topics to discuss now and things that I didn't get to mention inside of the other video. And so really the first thing is that I feel like Sony themselves are just not prepared yet for an all-digital future. I think that's why the announcement was also so surprising for people, is that a lot of people kind of just knew that at some point there was going to be that inevitability where everything was going to move to being an all digital future. But I think it's because of that a lot of people, including myself, still thought that we had at least one more generation left, and that the PlayStation 6 generation would be the one where they really like heavily lock into like the digital stuff. Physical is still an option, but they kind of slowly dwindle it down until the PlayStation 7 is like the one where it's like straight up all digital, there's nothing else left. And that's like kind of what they do with the PS6 generation, is treat it as like a more transition type of generation where they kind of bridge it between the physical games and the digital games. But now they just straight up made this announcement that no, the PlayStation 6 generation is going to be like where they're starting this, and it just seems a little too soon. And it was also the fact that they made that announcement and it was just completely full of negative energy, and there was nothing good about it at all, which is what I saw a lot of other people talking about too, which is that if they said something where it's like, yeah, physical game production is going to be ending in January 2028, but here is a list of all the new stuff that we're going to be implementing for our digital games, where maybe they're going to be a little cheaper, you're going to have better ownership for them, you're going to be able to game share them with other people. Like if they introduce these other things, I feel like the reception to this might have been taken completely differently, knowing that they've thought about this type of stuff. They're going to add better features to their digital games, but we already know how digital games are, and they made no new announcements for anything with that. So it basically just seems like, yeah, we're just taking this away from you now, and we're not giving you anything else new. We're not giving you any benefits. And I think that's also why like a lot of people are just pissed, is that like this is nothing positive at all. It's just a bunch of bad information. And it was just a few days ago where this article came out about how Microsoft had deleted someone's account that had 25 years worth of digital games and personal data after it got hacked. And so apparently this was some Dutch streamer who made a post about it, saying that they basically lost access to their Microsoft account after it got hacked, and they went to their support and asked them to try to help out and try to retrieve all of their data back. And they basically told him that they did everything that they could, but unfortunately it's not really possible for them to do anything on their end. So this person lost like a bunch of personal photos and information that was already on their account, but also 25 years worth of digital games that were in their library. And it just felt like this really happened at the most perfect time possible, because this is literally what PlayStation is trying to do for their entire player base, where everything is just going to be all digital. And a perfect example of something that can happen is this, and how you basically have very limited control in a situation like this. So this person did not get refunded any money for their games, and they essentially have to make a brand new Microsoft account from scratch and repurchase all of those games if they want to have them again, which if you have 25 years worth of games in your library, that could be like thousands and thousands of dollars that you would have to spend if you want to have all of those games back. And that is like one of the best examples of how this is such a horrible thing that can happen if all of your games are tied to an account and you have this all digital future, because you could do do everything completely perfectly, where you have very secure passwords, you make sure not to share any personal information or anything online, but you click on one wrong link or you do something somewhere else and hackers and like people are able to infiltrate your accounts and other personal data. They're able to get in here and they're able to like compromise it and take all of this stuff on your account. Then you could go to the support for like PlayStation or Microsoft or whatever, and they could just tell you, yeah, we did everything we could, but unfortunately we can't do anything. Sorry about that. And you're pretty much just screwed. But if you owned all of your games physically and this same type of thing happened to you, then the worst thing that could happen is you would have to make a new account, but then you could just put each disc back into your console and wait for all the game data to install from the disc onto your system, which could take a long time, but you would still have all of your games. And that is one of the best things about physical games, which is that unless something actually happens to the disc itself where it gets stolen or it gets damaged or something, you're always going to have the physical game. And that is definitely something that I would rather risk than having everything be on the account itself, because in this digital age now where hackers are always trying to steal personal data and information, I feel like the risk of that happening, and especially it being out of your control, is way higher than just you taking good care of your discs and making sure that nothing happens to them. And PlayStation Store itself is also just really bad at being able to handle a lot of traffic, as just a few days ago was the re-release of Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, and just the launch of these games, which are literally 16 years old, this caused the PlayStation Store to crash, where people were not able to get in, they were not able to download their games. And so if we're talking about like these decade-old games that are causing this, can you imagine what's going to happen when Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out, or like moving into the future for this all-digital future where every single person has to get their game like this and has to go to this store if there's a big launch for a game? Like, that just sounds awful. Another thing that I never even considered until I saw a lot of you mentioning it in the comments of my last video is that the PlayStation is not just available in rich and developed places like America and the UK and Australia. There's a lot of poorer countries and less developed countries where you can still get a PlayStation, and people do that, and they really rely on having physical games because the internet connections inside of these poorer countries is significantly worse than a lot of these developed ones, where they're usually like having kilobytes of like internet data where it's very, very slow and it's always disconnecting and stuff. And if you're gonna force all of these people now to only be able to get their games digitally, like how are you gonna expect them to install these games that are like these brand new next-gen games that are like 90, 100 plus gigabytes on their really slow internet, which is always disconnecting and stuff? Like, you're creating an extremely big hurdle for these people now for being able to just experience the games and being able to play them, which is something that they didn't have to worry about, because if they bought their games physically, they could just put the disc in and let it all install locally. But I was able to really see how evil this situation is when I finally realized that literally every single form of entertainment is able to have digital convenience in this modern era, but it still has physical options that are still available today. So like movies, for example, every single new movie that comes out is pretty much very easily available on streaming services like Netflix and Peacock and Hulu, and people are always just watching them very conveniently on there, but you can still get Blu-rays and DVDs for every new release that comes out if you want to be able to watch them locally too, and a lot of people still do that, and that option does exist. This is also something that happens with TV shows as well, as a show that I really got into a couple years ago when it came out and I was back in college was Squid Game. And that was something that I was really invested in. Like, me and my friends were always watching it. We really enjoyed it. And the thing is, that is a Netflix exclusive show, but even it being exclusive to Netflix, you can actually buy an entire box set of Squid Game and be able to watch it locally on like a Blu-ray disc if you want to. And I think that just having that type of option is so nice, and that goes for other exclusive shows on other exclusive platforms, and literally any new TV show or even old ones, you always have that option to be able to get them physically if you want to own them. Music, I feel like, is one of the best examples of this, where after the invention of the iTunes Store and being able to just download new songs right away onto your device, that became such a convenient option that a ton of people use with like Apple Music or Spotify or whatever. But every single new album that comes out from a popular artist, you can still get them physically as a CD if you want to play them on like a boombox or something at home, but they also even come in other formats too. Like vinyls are making a comeback where like you can get vinyls now for all of these new albums too and play them with like an old school vinyl player. But I've even seen like cassettes for them, which is something that made me really happy. Is that like before this new car that I got like a few months ago, I drove a 1999 Corolla where it didn't even have a CD slot, but it had a cassette player. And the fact that even if I wanted to listen to some of these new songs from my favorite artists, if I want to have them, I still have that option to buy them even in a cassette form and be able to experience them in a very old car, which I definitely appreciate. Books are also a great example too, where it is so convenient to just have a device like a Kindle where you can download new books onto that device and be able to access them in just a few minutes, or even just having them right on your smartphone where you've got the Kindle app or like an iBooks app or something, and you can just download books right away, be able to read them right there on your phone. And even having that much convenience, you can still get all of the newest books in physical formats where you can go into a store like Barnes & Noble, or you can go into just like a Walmart or a Target, and there's still an aisle where you can get physical books. Even with stuff overseas from other countries like anime, you can still get the newest anime shows on Blu-ray and be able to watch them like that, or even get like the manga like physical versions and be able to flip through the pages and read it that way. So physical is just available for every form of entertainment, so why are we trying to remove it from video games? Every one of these that I just mentioned, digital is more convenient for every single one of them. For movies, you can just open up Netflix or Hulu. For TV shows, you've got the same thing, Apple TV, Netflix, whatever. Music, you've got Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. Anime, there's so many anime streaming services like Crunchyroll and stuff like that. Books, you've got Kindles and stuff, but every single one of them still offers a physical version, so why can't we do that for video games? Literally, what is the reason to not have a physical disc or a cartridge version for people who are interested in purchasing their games that way, even while the most convenient way that everybody likes to use is digital? That's what I really started to realize, is that it's literally just video games that they're trying to do this for, because every other type of entertainment is still okay with it. I was listening to one of my favorite YouTubers, Maximilian Dude, talking about this, and he actually had a really interesting point, so take a look at this clip.
Yes, we've all enjoyed the convenience of being able to download a game and have it freely available without having to disk ID check. Like, for sure. I mean, I get it. That's the reason I've done it. But I think for a lot of us, and for me especially, this is definitely from a point of luxury, you know? This is from a point of luxury. Whenever I get a game that I truly love, I buy a copy of that bitch. Like, I buy a physical copy as well. And a lot of the games that I'm really into, they come from physical copies, and I forget that. Where it's like, oh, I usually just buy everything digitally just for convenience and streamability. I'm in a unique situation. I make videos and shit, right? But if I do have an only digital version, I'm like, shit, this shit bangs, dude. I just want that shit. I want it. I want it to not go away. And I think that's what people are not understanding.
What he's saying here is actually really true for a lot of people, where even though digital is the most convenient way to get new games and it is what most people do, sometimes if you end up playing a new game that really resonates with you and you really love it and it just becomes such an important game for you, a lot of times those people will end up buying that game again in a physical format just so that they could actually own the game themselves and have a physical version of it, or display it like on their shelf or like their collection, because they love that game so much. And the thing is, you ended up just selling that game twice now, because they bought the game digitally and they got the game physically, and this happens more often than you think. I have a kind of similar story like that too, but the thing is, I don't buy my games digitally at the start, so one of the games that I was actually interested in and I ended up picking for the very first time was Final Fantasy VII Remake. And this was back in 2020, 6 years ago. I got it for my PS4 and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. This was my first ever Final Fantasy game, and I ended up loving that game so much, it became so important to me that I literally ended up buying the collector's version of it after, where it came with the deluxe version of the game physically again, while also coming with like a whole bunch of extra stuff. And then when it came to the following parts of the trilogy that came after, I ended up buying the collector's version of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth as well. And I'm also going to do the same with the finale with Final Fantasy VII Revelation, and that's supposed to come out in spring of next year. But it was because of the first game that I ended up loving so much that I actually bought the collector's version and the whole game again, essentially, because it comes with it. So a lot of times people actually want to have the physical versions of these games too, and might even double dip more than you expect, where a lot of times somebody might want to just play a game as soon as it's available at midnight, so they'll get the game digitally, but then they'll also want the game physically, so they'll get a physical version too. So I also feel like just having physical games, you're also kind of just taking out that for a lot of people too. Now, PlayStation has not said anything ever since they made their initial announcement, and I guess they're trying to do that dog meme of like, he trying to ignore it, because every single comment section on every PlayStation post is immediately just full of people asking for physical games and being very upset and angry and disappointed about this. All of their posts get community noted, and it's not even just something that's exclusive to the PlayStation account, it's also happening for like the entire main Sony account on Twitter as well, all of their new uploads on YouTube and stuff. So clearly there's a ton of people still that are very angry about this, and I feel like it's definitely much more than Sony might have been expecting. Now, I don't feel anything for Sony, but I do kind of feel a little bad for some of these game devs where if they have like their new games that are coming out on PlayStation, they usually have the PlayStation account make like a tweet for them where it ends up like promoting their game and letting people know about it. But right now, because they're coming out at this time, every single one of those tweets is full of people getting really angry about physical discs and stuff in the comments, which if I was a game developer and I knew my game was releasing really soon and PlayStation was going to be making a post to hype it up for me, and then I had this happen in all the comments, I would be really disappointed as a developer too. So I do feel bad for them, because it's not like these people who made these indie games and these other smaller types of games that are asking for exposure are the ones who decided on not having physical discs and stuff. They're just looking for people to play their game and having that. So I do feel bad for them trying to have all of their new games and getting all of that be like kind of overshadowed by all of this. But at the same time, I also kind of hope that it makes them kind of fight back too, where they could say like, hey, we paid for these advertisements and we paid for you guys to make posts about our game, but because of all this like disc controversy and stuff, we're not happy with what you're doing for this, and maybe it'll cause Sony to actually make some change and make like an announcement about it. But yeah, I've yapped for enough about this again, so yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to click that like button and also subscribe to the channel as well. I'm definitely gonna have some more videos, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Comment down below and let me know what you think about all of this. How are you feeling about this entire physical game situation now? Do you have anything new to say about it? How do you feel about all these new things that I talked about here? And do you think that Sony is going to do anything about it? Definitely be sure to comment down below and let me know. But if you don't have anything to say about it, just comment your favorite emoji down below for some engagement. I would really appreciate it. Go follow me on Twitter at Aero so you can be featured in videos. And also join my Discord server as well. We've got a bunch of people in there who are always talking about Pokemon and Smash Bros and Nintendo, so definitely be sure to join that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.